Two Peas in a Library here. I'm Bree,
And I'm Lou.
and today we are going to be doing a long-awaited review for This Is How You Die by David Jester. Really excited. We've been sitting on this one for a while, so let's jump into it.
Yeah. First, like without any kind of spoilers about it, it's like a 10 out of 10 recommend, and not like in the sarcastic way like I did with The Girl in the Mirror, where I recommended that one because I hated it and I want other people to hate it. But this one I like absolutely loved it. Like Bree here got it for me for my birthday like 2 years ago, and it kind of just sat on my shelf until I ran out of things to read or reread, because that's our lives, where you just keep reading your comfort books. So I picked it up and I started reading it, and then I freaked out at Bree about it because I was like, it's so amazing. And then I stayed up till like 2 a.m. reading it. And then for her birthday, I ended up getting her her own copy so we could actually so she could read it too and experience the greatness of it.
Because I
And
wasn't being
then
quick enough in getting it myself and reading it.
yeah. So, and then Brie took so long to get to the podcast just because of life things happening. Yeah. So, but it's follows, the synopsis is like it follows Herman, a young teen who is basically like a sociopath or psychopath or some path. That's not an empath. uh, he gets bullied. But his hero is the butcher, which is a serial killer in his small little town in somewhere in England. And he like aspires to be just like the butcher. The butcher is his hero. And he his father dies. He learns that his father is the butcher in like the weirdest way possible. And it's basically the first part is Herman's story of becoming sort of the butcher. Like he doesn't really live up to it because of his adolescence. And then so the book switches point of views. It goes from Herman to Lester, which is a detective on his tail, but it doesn't do it like every other chapter like some books do. It does it where it's like part 1 is Herman's, part 2 is Lester's, part 3 is Herman's, and it goes back and forth like that. So it's a little more cohesive, because I've read a couple of books where they do this switching of characters and it just like feels very non-cohesive basically. But into the spoilers, I guess now. So within the first couple of pages, at least for me, especially upon my reread, you kind of get a sense of Herman's personality, and it's basically that he just thinks he's better than everyone. He thinks he's the best shit in town, that even though he's bullied, like he is still better than everyone and stuff like that, which I think does like it speaks to his adolescence, but not in the same way as like some of the other stuff we're going to touch on. So he one of his youngest memories is his father beating his mom, and I just think it's funny that like looking back on it, because he remembers it so vividly, because his dad is usually like his dad is like like the classic abuser stereotype, where it's like he's one way in public but another way in private. So the second his dad sees Herman like watching him beat his mom black and blue, he like flips the switch back to loving, caring, and all of that stuff. And they never talk about it again. The beating is never brought up, but then a year later or a few days later or something, his mom leaves them, quote unquote. Which Herman blames his mom for, instead of like, like thinking, oh, my mom, like, because Herman, his dad never abused Herman, so Herman wasn't really in any danger from his dad. So I just find it like weird that Herman blames his mom for leaving an abusive situation, even though we're like pretty certain that Herman's dad killed his mom. I don't remember if it was ever like specifically stated in the book, but it's pretty obvious that that's what's being hinted at, because she just abruptly leaves, like no, nothing, no taking her son with her, because in some situations, like when an abuser doesn't have their normal victim, they'll just go on to the next one, which would have been Herman. So like it's just a weird circumstance, and I think it speaks to his adolescence that he blames his mom for leaving them, like, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And then another time his youth shows is like he's walking home from school and his neighbor stops him to have a chat just about like her cat either having kittens or dying. He doesn't know and he doesn't really care. But instead of like even pretending to like listen to her and like being able to respond to her questions and stuff, he just sits in his head and is like, I hate the fact that I have to do this. I envy my father for being able to turn on the charm and yada, yada, yada. And then he gets mad that she's mad at him for not listening to her when he wasn't exactly obligated to stop and stand and chat, aside from saying hello and how are you really. So it's just, he's very like his first part is very just him being a youthful killer, and just his like his adolescence is showing. Like he's only 16 in the first part, so he's still really young. What?
Okay, that is okay. So this is like my mind just like completely like sidetracked, because like something that you had said like reminded me that I wasn't entirely sure, and I might need you to refresh my memory on this, on how Herman's dad ends up dying.
He I think they bring it down to like a heart attack, because
Okay.
he comes home from school and he sees his dad just lying there with a small puddle of blood from his head, from where his head hit the ground.
Okay.
And I think they basically just say he had a heart attack or a stroke or something.
Yeah, because like I was just, we were like, you were talking about that at the end of my mind was just like, I'm not sure I remember how he died. Okay.
Yeah, it's some like mundane thing, which I think is a funny like
Ironic.
Yeah, like an ironic thing for the butcher to die
Almost
in
like
such a mundane
climactic.
way. Yeah. And it's like his name will live on in infamy, at least in the town, but they'll all just think maybe he moved away, maybe like, I don't know, maybe he got caught doing something else, maybe whatever. Herman's first the person that Herman wants to kill the most is his biggest bully, Darren. And I'm like, I just find that as another sign of his adolescence, because it's like, if you're gonna kill someone, you shouldn't have the first victim be the dude who bullies you every day. And it's not like it's very violent bullying. Like they kick him, they spit on him, they stomp on him, like it's violent. So it's like very obvious that it'd be like, oh yes, this is the person, like, oh, Herman might have something to do with this, since everyone has seen him being beat up by him, this dude and his cohort, like I get the wanting to get revenge on the guy, but I just think it's not the smartest way to go about it. You gotta leave him for the second or third victim. One thing that's a little different about Herman from like a lot of other killers in normal media is that he's like an asexual killer. He takes no sexual gratification in any way, shape, or form in his killing, like versus his father, because his father obviously kept mementos and will touch on this in a minute again, but part of his mementos was like basically word documents talking about like all of his stalking that he's done of the victims, and then the killing of the victims. And the first victim that Herman reads about was basically a prostitute that his dad had picked up for whatever reason, and took her out to the woods to, I think, kill her. Like the plan was to kill her, but he tries to have sex with her first, but he can't get it up. Even when he's like literally choking the life out of her, he still can't get it up until he kills her. And at that point, he gets it up. But with Herman, it's very opposite. He sees like all of his classmates, basically all of his victims, even later in life, until probably like the last scene, which we'll touch on later, where he kills a whole theater group. But he thinks of them as basically just disgusting creatures, diseased, filthy animals, like basically that kind of thing. Like he thinks all of his classmates are riddled with STDs because all they do is have unprotected sex, and like all of that stuff, which like is probably a little true. But the one scene we do get where Herman does witness a sex scene, the girl is like very against having unprotected sex. Like she makes the guy go get a condom, and then she's also on the pill, and then so like obviously she's like not disease ridden and all of that stuff, like in theory anyways. She's not crawling with STDs. She's not like,
she's being safe.
She's taking precautions to make sure she's safe. But then like his youth shows, as I keep saying, and when he's sneaking out of the house, he pokes holes in all of her condoms and then replaces her birth control with like Tic Tacs. And it's like he's just trying to create her into the image he sees of her, basically.
Yeah.
Because
like he hates it, but at the same time he's contributing to it.
Yeah, like he's like not seeing, oh, even though this person was rude to me for no reason, she's not being the type of person that I think she is, so maybe I should just leave her alone. I don't know. It's basically just an act of revenge because she was rude to him, even though she doesn't know him, which is like a very petty reason to want someone to get pregnant, to make someone get pregnant, basically.
Yeah, it probably came from a mindset of like, oh well, she deserves to be like everyone else anyway. So
yeah.
Just
and then there's so he first sees her at a party that he's invited to, which is I'm not going to get too much into this scene because I think it's such a good scene, but during the party there is a dog and it's a good suspenseful scene. And then when he's leaving the party, he fucking puts bleach in the punch, which I think was hilarious, like in such a demented way, because he's like basically reassuring the reader and possibly himself a little bit. And he's like, oh, don't worry, they won't like die. They'll just be mildly inconvenienced. And then it's basically proven to him on Monday at school, because like all of the friends are avoiding eye contact of each other because they saw more of each other than they had wanted to. And I'm like, Herman, you don't know with some of these people, like they may drink more of the punch, they may drink less of the punch. Some of these people may already have problems with their intestines. You could have killed someone doing this, Herman. But I loved it. Oh yeah, I know. He's, like I said, we started this off with saying that he's a sociopath or a psychopath, so obviously he doesn't give a shit. But it's just funny that like he goes so far and he's like, whatever, because he does it to explicitly not kill anyone. He doesn't want to kill anyone doing this stunt. He just wants to mildly inconvenience people, basically. And then, so after his dad dies, his uncle comes to be his guardian, and he like ends up destroying his uncle's sobriety because his uncle is an alcoholic, like a pretty severe alcoholic, until he meets this one girl. And then like basically they start getting clean together. And so his uncle starts taking a more active role in his life. Instead of like before, he just didn't care when Herman left the house or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so like one day after school, Darren beats up Herman really bad. So and Herman goes home. The girlfriend shows up while the uncle is, I think, just asleep or something. I don't think. And she sees Herman's face is all like bruised and like obviously he had been beaten up. And she automatically thinks that his uncle did it to him for some reason, which I think is just like a weird automatic thought process. So she like faces Herman neither confirms nor denies it. He plays the pronoun game and he was like, yeah, he does it to me every day. Yeah, he does it. Like he just says he instead of stating the fact that, oh, it's my bully that does it, not my uncle. But she ends up leaving and breaking up with his uncle, who then gets back into alcohol and harder stuff. So, but like good on the girlfriend, because I don't think she relapses because she's a druggie. I think it's implied that she does, I think heroin does the track marks.
Yeah.
She does because she wears long sleeves to cover the track marks. So it's implied that that's her drug of choice. But for anyone listening that is possibly an alcoholic or goes to AA or NA or whatever anonymous, don't date anyone going to anything else that's anonymous because that's a good way to relapse. So that's a random little PSA, but I feel like a lot of people don't know that. So, and then
the both of you.
Yeah. So, and then basically Herman's part ends with him ending up killing his bully's main lackey, and two random girls, and then also his uncle. Do you want to start Lester's part?
Yeah. So, when you first start reading Lester's part, it threw me for a little bit of a loop because the synopsis doesn't really delve into the fact or allude to the idea that there was going to be a detective point of view in this book.
Yeah, not a point of view, but it says that there's a detective.
Yeah. And so the fact that we got like directly from like his point of view, it was definitely, I'm glad they did it that way. But you kind of have to like know about that to not be confused when you first start reading it, because it starts off with him, you know, because when Herman kills these people, there's security camera footage, and so Lester ends up getting assigned the case, and his part starts with like him like reviewing all this footage. And
well,
I think it's like
Lester wasn't initially assigned the case. It's just a case that his department has. He's assigned Herman's case later when Herman is the masquerade.
Yeah, that's, I should have clarified that. But yeah, so he's like reviewing this footage, and I think it's like during the footage that you kind of, because you know when you're reading the killing scene from Herman's perspective, you know, with Herman, it almost,
you don't have a killing scene.
Huh?
You don't have a killing scene with Herman. It ends with Herman going out to commit the killings, but there's no killing scene with Herman until later on when he is already the masquerade.
Oh, I thought there was a point of view, because like I thought he had like a, oh, well, the killing scene then being told from Lester's point of view kind of gives you a really good image of like how like brutal it was, like in how he's describing like the footage. And so basically Lester gets assigned this case because there is a new killer called the Masquerade, and Lester is very heavily faithful in the theory that the masquerade is actually Herman, but very few people are choosing to believe in that theory because, you know, when Herman killed those people and his uncle, his house burned down, I think, and so everyone just kind of thought that he either went with the house or left. And so everyone was like, yeah, there's no way that he would come back, like, after all
Yeah.
these years or whatever. Like, it's not going to be him, like, especially because it appears like Herman doesn't really show too much of a pattern in his killing, so there's really nothing to connect it. But, you know,
Yeah.
Lester has, like, this gut feeling, and so it's a theory that he's very faithful in, and that's how he's kind of directing his entire investigation, but he's kind of, like, alone in that effort, for that
Yeah.
specifically. There's definitely
Yeah.
a lot of passion behind the investigation, which I think is really cool because I think the passion that he puts into the investigation is a lot of what fuels the passion that we see between the last showdown between him and Herman when they actually meet face to face in the theater.
Yeah. Because what ends up happening is like, so Lester's backstory is like, he's basically a cop that should have already retired, like, basically. And I say that because his wife dies. I can't remember how, like through some like car accident or something. But his wife dies, and it leaves Lester as the sole provider, along with his wife's mom, so the kids' grandma, um, as the sole providers, because the wife, like the way it was before, was like Herman was basically married to his job. Like he loved his wife, but he was married to his job. So the way it worked was like she was basically raising the kids while he worked, and he would come home obviously and like spend time with the kids, but like work was like more important almost. So I think like once his wife died, I think that's when he should have retired, because it's very obvious he was very unfit for the role of being a person that raises children. Like having the wife there is good because she can help him through it, but he didn't have anyone at that point to help him raise the kids. And so like the daughter basically starts experimenting with men. I think she has a 30-year-old boyfriend, and she's like just turning 18. And then the brother is like 14 or 15, like he's younger still, and he's starting to experiment with like drugs, like starting off with weed, but he does it in a house where there is harder drugs very easily gotten to. So he like basically he doesn't give the kids the attention they need, because he didn't, I don't think he take much time off once his wife died to like help them mourn and help them get over it and stuff. And so there's a very big rift, which just makes everything that happens all the more worse, because like Lester really does care for his kids. He loves his kids. He would die for his kids, but Herman gets to them first, basically.
Don't plot twist. Spoiler.
Well, we're in the spoiler portion, so they better be expecting it. The way that is set up, though, with the kids being killed is like so good, because like I wasn't necessarily expecting it, because like we jump to, it's during Herman's point of view when we've, I guess, get the inkling that he's going after Lester's kids, but like he doesn't like straight out say like, oh, this is Lester's daughter that I'm going home with, you know. You're kind of left to your imagination. I just thought, when I first read through it, I just thought it was like some random girl, until you get to the scene where Lester discovers them, and that was just heartbreaking. Like at that point, like Lester's like, you know what, fuck this, free for all it, baby.
Yeah, but, especially because like leading up to Herman put a lot of, okay, so like before we get to the whole like theater scene and stuff like that, I'm gonna kind of delve into the whole like a church scene and the church killing.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't there yet. I just jumped ahead a little.
Okay.
But because I was gonna say, like you were saying, no one really knows about Lester's theory that Herman is the masquerade, except for his boss. which he is told the theory to, and his boss is like, okay, I can give you like a week off or whatever. I think he had to suspend him or something. Yeah, he had to suspend him because Lester went to some druggy house to get his son because his son was there getting high, and he beat up a dude, like punched him in his face. I think almost broke his jaw, kind of punch.
Yeah.
You know, the good cop stuff. No. Um, so his boss like knows about his theory, and he's like, I'm suspending you for like a week or two or something. You can go and work on this theory, but just know that you're suspended, kind of thing, you know? So there's that. And then one thing we forgot to mention is that before we get to the scene of Herman killing Darren and his friends, Herman goes and kills Darren's stepdad and half-brother, which in and of itself is fucked up because his brother was like a toddler. And most like most horror media isn't into killing kids, no matter how young or old. Like if they're under 18, maybe with a little leeway between 16 and 17, you're not killing kids, you know? Yeah. So he kills the brother and the stepdad, and he was going to kill Darren's mom, but he has like some weird fixation with his mom, which like it's never really explained. And I think that kind of like, I think that's fine, but like at the same time, it's like, why? Because like maybe it could be mommy issues because his own mom left. Mm-hmm. But I don't really think I don't think Darren has enough like empathy, sympathy. Like I don't think he has enough of that to like kind of put the two together and like see his mom and Darren's mom, especially since Darren's mom is Darren's mom and Darren is his major bully. Like I don't think because I don't think Herman's mom is ever like described like what she looks like, but I kind of don't think that Darren's mom and Herman's mom look anything alike. Like, so it's just weird. He decides to leave her alive, but he spent like a good long while just talking to her before he left to go kill Darren. So during Lester's suspension, he goes and tracks down Darren's mom and talks to her, trying to get an insight to Herman and stuff. And that's when Herman kind of decides that it's a personal. So that's when all the fun stuff starts happening.
Mm-hmm. So obviously this is kind of to be expected, coming from like a sociopath, psychopath, whatever you want to call him. But Herman
is not an empath.
Not an empath, no. But he kind of has this like almost a god complex to himself. And I would never have called it like a god complex until like I read this scene specifically, where basically there's like this church service that's happening in a Catholic church. And he kills the priest, and he is posing as the priest in the confessional box, and the altar boy goes in to do confession. And basically Herman kind of directs the conversation to fixate on the fact that this altar boy, that despite his religion, is like a 16-year-old boy who masturbates. I mean, come on now. And
shocker, I know.
And so like Herman was like really like zeroing in on that fact and making him feel dirty and worthless, and like again like with the whole like disease ridden whole kind of like paranoia complex to that whole concept. And he ends up killing the altar boy in a very brutal fashion. He had like a screwdriver to the eye type of brutal, like right through the mesh of the confessional box. And when he's done killing, he ends up doing like this grand, completely like hanging up like on the cross, like in a religious, almost like religious sacrifice kind of pose. And it's like a really, really big display. And I think that's one of the reasons why Lester like really like hones in on the fact that this dude is like making it personal somehow. And it also just really highlights like the whole like God complex. Like he thinks he's God, and he thinks that he's I don't know, doing some kind of service by killing 16-year-old boys that masturbate.
Yeah, he already thought he was a god because before he knows that the butcher is his father, he's like sitting there just kind of reading a passage in a newspaper about him, and he's basically saying that he wants to become a god like the butcher is. He wants like, so he already has the god complex from such a young age. He makes it super personal and goes after Lester's kids, Lester's mother-in-law. Like, it's just even though like Lester's part is very slow to begin, and some of it you're just like, I don't even care, but you end up still feeling so bad because like by the end, like Lester is like throwing himself at Herman, is like, just kill me, like you've already killed me, basically, because he's killed his kids and stuff. Like the only thing that Lester was living for basically was his kids, and he's killed them. And he's like throwing himself at Lester after having already gone through a brutal battle. Like Lester, or throwing himself at Herman after them going through a brutal battle. Like Lester's jaw is broken. Like he's like, I think like some of his fingers are broken. Like he's just broken.
He is beat the heck up.
And he's just throwing himself at Herman, telling him to kill himself. And I think it's the only part where it's like totally in third person, because I think we also get Herman's thoughts on it too. And Herman is basically like disappointed.
There wasn't much big, especially, and like we'll talk about a few other things before we get to like how specifically that final scene went down. But they're like, there was no like big fight, no hoorah, no.
Yeah, like after
you until my very last breath, there was none of that.
Yeah, because Lester realizes that it's a losing battle at this point, so he's just
because he's smart.
Like, yeah, Lester's smart. Lester actually has brains, unlike Herman. So he's just like throwing himself, saying, "Kill me," and Herman does, I think, slits his throat or something. No. Okay, I'll let you do that then. But I want to go back to like the gore aspect for a second.
Yes.
And it's like, so at least for me, like when I'm reading horror, I don't necessarily want to feel the gore myself, you know, like when you're watching like a horror movie, you don't always feel it yourself. Which I appreciated with this book. Like I didn't like when when Lester and his coworker are watching the video of Herman killing the kids, like even though it is absolutely brutal, like he kills them and then he has a crossbow and he fires like a couple arrows into each of the bodies just to make sure they're dead. You know, like he's just brutal to them. But then I compare it to like The Ritual by Adam Neville, which I read, and that gore is like, I feel it. Like I just feel it, like especially when it's happening to the main character. Like at some point he gets a real bad concussion because he hits his head like so many times in such a short span that his skull is like super fractured. And like at one point, like someone touches it, because I don't want to get too spoilery into the book. Someone like touches it to torture him, and you can just feel it, like feel the fingers pressing the skull into your brain. Like with this book, I appreciated that I can kind of watch the gore with like a detached sense, you know. So if you're into that kind of, like if you don't mind gore, then go read The Ritual, because it's very good. But if you're kind of wanting it more as like a detached sense, then this one is a good one for that too. Or just read them both, because I highly recommend both.
Since we're here.
Since we're here, and I don't think we'll cover it on the podcast.
We might.
I mean, if you get it, I definitely think like, but okay, we're getting off topic now. So part of the reason why the big showdown between Lester and Herman is such a big thing. Is like you say that he like isn't a showman or something. He doesn't want to be a showman, but like, he is. The whole
Yeah,
point
well,
of
'cause
him being called the Masquerade is because he wears no one's seen his face. He wears like a mask that looks like similar to the mask from the Red Death, which is something that you've read, I think, or know more about than I do.
yeah. Well, it was so funny because it's like when I read that part, you know, when it begins Herman's perspective of that part, he's like, the similarities are completely coincidence. I was like, stop BSing me, dude. No, it's not. I mean, because like he's obviously a showman with the show that he put on with his victims at the church, and like the lettering on the wall and the display that he put with Lester's kids after he killed them. I'm like, you are obviously a showman. Like, come the heck on.
That comes from his dad, because his dad would like not like, the reason why his dad is called the Butcher is because he would like butcher these people like hardcore. Like he's cutting bodies apart, he's dissecting, he's butchering them, and then he basically leaves it as like a shock factor for the person to see, I guess. And Herman takes that portion from the butcher's MO and does it for his victims too. It does a shock factor kind of thing. I don't think like his, I'm gonna call them minor victims, are as shocking as like what it ends up being with Lester's kids and the theater and the church part. But it's still like a shock factor for it, for the person that finds them. Like, because I don't know, if I walked into an apartment and there's just a dissected body in front of me, I think that's a little shocking.
A little traumatizing, yeah.
Yeah.
When it's like and with the whole like theater scene specifically, the story, The Mask of the Red Death, you know, if we're sticking with the whole metaphor of the theatrical performance, that story is just so easy to let Herman play a star role with what he wanted to do. Like, it was basically made for that. I mean, like, he couldn't have picked a better one, which is why I have a very hard time believing that it was coincidence. And especially like, just because, like, it just fit.
Yeah, I mean, it may have been coincidence, like, when he chose that mask. Like, he may not have chosen, like, the Mask of the Red Death specifically. He just happened to choose one that looks similar, and other people made that connection. He was like, you know what? I don't hate it.
Yeah, but him choosing to have his final showdown at a theater rehearsal for the Mask of Red Death was definitely not coincidental.
Oh no, that's a very planned thing.
Symbolic.
Because he's like, oh, you call me the Masquerade because my mask looks similar to this one.
Yeah, but it was so good though. Oh, love it.
He leaves a flyer for Lester to find anyways in I think his mother-in-law's house, whichever house that he kills the kids in.
Yeah.
And Lester's like, you think he's gonna get there in time? You think he is? He doesn't.
And that scene is just so good. Like, are we ready to talk about that scene?
Yeah, we can talk about that scene.
So, like, basically, so it starts off when Herman kills the director. That's this first victim of that whole performance. He kills the director, and he basically walks up on this group of kids holding the director's decapitated head. Just walks up like normal, like, hey, what's up? I'm holding your director's decapitated head. What are you gonna do about it? And so everyone is like, oh, okay. That man is holding our director's head, and that director's head is not attached to his body. Panic. And so, you know, it's chaos, and Herman is just killing amongst all the chaos, but like it's almost like an organized chaos, because obviously he has, you know, like the entrances and the exits all taken care of and stuff like that. He even has it so planned out that he knows when and where Lester is going to come in. Like, he has it specifically like blocked off and planned out to where like he knows where Lester's gonna enter, and it's like it's very planned out and very genius.
And one of the so during the scene, Herman is using an axe to kill, because I think it's just a fire axe that he finds there. Like, he just takes it off the wall, you know, as you do
casually.
And
Like not even worried about it. He's like, I'll just find something there. Like, oh, I wonder what the murder weapon should be. I'll find something there. It's fine. Like,
I mean, I'm sure he has a knife with him because he uses a knife on Lester.
yeah.
Unless Lester got the knife.
Yeah. No, it's a
but
knife.
he would have had the knife anyways. And even as he's killing the actors, he's quoting the play. He's just talking the play. I think he's talking the part of the Red Death.
He's like performing for himself.
Yeah. He's performing, and it's like, Herman, my guy. We're like, well, because it even starts as like a young kid, because when he does his massacre, he's dressed up as Santa Claus.
I forgot about that.
Like, he's dressed as Santa Claus during his, he even has a sack, and that's like what he carries all of his weapons in. So him performing is been going on forever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, Lester is just like brutal and shit, like, because he just brings like the axe down on people's heads. He's
like watching them crawl away, and he's just walking up on him like, oh, that's pathetic. I'm gonna kill you anyway.
Yeah, and like a couple of them he just basically bludgeons to death, where he uses either the blunt end of the axe or the handle or something. It doesn't specify, but like you can use your imagination for it. And it's just a good scene. And I know we talked about it a little earlier, and then Lester comes and they have a fighting scene, and it's just so brutal.
Yeah.
Like you're like cheering for Lester, hoping, praying. And I say that as someone who doesn't pray.
Yeah, for real. And like the ending was just so,
it's so brutal. Like you're just, you know, it's gonna happen anyways, and then it happens, and you're just so sad. And then it ends really with Herman being like, America, because the cops there are also stupid.
Oh yeah,
because he can't stay in that town anymore after he kills the cop. Like once you're a cop killer, you're gonna be like on everyone's radar. And like I would like to specify that this portion of the book all takes place within the 5 days that Lester has off on his suspension.
Yeah, good job, Lester.
Like, well, no, good job, Herman. He's fucking busy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But I think it was kind of like almost like ironically beautiful, like the way that Lester died, because you know obviously he knows that physically he's not going to beat Herman. Mm-hmm. But I think he's like been researching and studying and tracking Herman down long enough to know that there is some kind of like a deep and sadistic like satisfaction between pinning someone against the wall and being the one to take their life. And so basically the way that Lester died was that he knows that he's quit. Like he knows that it's over. He knows that he lost. And he's like facing Herman, and he's like doing this monologue or whatever. And Herman has like the knife pointed at him, waiting for like the right moment to take Lester's life, you know, waiting for the dramatic peak of Lester's monologue to just end it. And Lester actually like he like grabs like Herman's hand that's holding the knife and plunges it into himself. He finishes it, not Herman. And that's something that really gets in Herman's head. He's like, what the heck? This is supposed to be my moment. This was my takedown, my showdown, and you ruined it. Even though that you're dead, I didn't get the satisfaction because I didn't do that. And that really messed with his head. And I think that was one of the goals that Lester is like, if I'm going to die anyway, I'm at least not going to give him the satisfaction of having it go the way that he had originally planned in this sick, sadistic performance that he meticulously plotted.
Yeah. So, yeah, and like we said, it ends with Herman basically deciding he's gonna go to America to continue his killing. And I really want a sequel of Herman in America getting tracked down and taken to jail, and basically, like we can, like, because I think he would already be labeled a flight risk because he left after his first killings. And I think at this point, it would basically be all but guaranteed to the cops in England that, oh, the masquerade is Herman. And he just killed one of our own. So they would be like, I think, but Herman gets away quick enough because I don't think the bodies are discovered like immediately afterwards because it was like a closed shoot. I don't know. But they're also teenagers that were doing it, so obviously their parents would get worried. I don't know. I can understand. I can see how Herman can get to America without anyone being on alert immediately. But I want a sequel of Herman in America, and like he's like on this what is it, the CIA or who, like the international people's radar with the FBI and stuff, and
he's not even worried. He goes and grabs a bite to eat afterward. He ain't even worried about it.
He's like talking to this waitress, and he's like, I could take her with me to kill her, and yada yada yada. But he decides to not, basically, because he just doesn't see her as worth his time. So yeah, I want to see a sequel. I want to see it with another dynamic with the cop, and maybe like a younger cop instead of Lester, who is 50 at the time of the book.
A more equal match.
Yeah, because Herman is maybe in his early 30s at this point, like maybe definitely in his later 20s, because I think it's only been like 10 years past since the first killings. So just someone that's more equal, and just having like I liked the cat and mouse game. I think you could make it work for another sequel. Like I think even if you kept most of the beats the same, I think it would still work in a sequel, because I think Herman is such a well-developed enough character. And then if you can do the cop plot developed enough, I think it would work out really well. I definitely want to see this as a TV series, not a movie. TV series, because a movie just wouldn't be able to put everything in. And I think a TV series would have more reign, even if they had to keep it like PG-13 or something. Which is fine, because there really isn't much cursing in the book anyways. It's all just blood and gore.
Which is classy. It's a classy kind of word.
Yeah, no cursing, which is weird because it's in English.
True. And, if it didn't explicitly tell you, it's almost like you wouldn't be able to tell that it was written.
Yeah, it like took me for so long to realize that it was actually set in England, because even though there's like one portion where it like basically explicitly says that it's being place in England, which is when like Herman is thinking about memories of him and his dad and how they had to, or his first drink, and they were in a bar and watching soccer for us Americans, or football for everyone else. And like he says English football or English soccer or something like that. And even then I still didn't click, because that seems like a very American like way phrasing of it. Instead of just saying soccer outright, you just say English football.
Yeah, like literally you go through the entire book and then he says, I could take her back with me to the United States. And you're thinking, where the frick have you been this whole time?
Like there's other things, and I eventually got it, and I texted you about it when I got it. And I was like, oh, this book's taking place in England. It's not the US.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's that part. But someone like, I think the person that would be best at directing this is the guy who did the Hill House and Bly Manor series.
Yes. Oh, preach. Finger snaps.
I think he would be good at directing it, or like maybe Ari Aster if he ever decided to do a TV series. The guy that did Hereditary and Midsommar.
Hated her
because I think oh, you shouldn't say that. You can't say that out loud. But I think because of with those two movies, they focus on grief, and I think he would be able to direct whoever they get to play Lester very well in that sense, because I think it would just be good. I think he would be good. I don't know. I can't think of any other directors that I would want to see. Maybe the people who did You, maybe.
Maybe. That seems like a different kind of style than what I would expect.
Well, This Is How You Die is a modern, it takes place, I think, in modern times, even though it doesn't like explicitly say that.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know, it feels like a different style almost. You know who I almost like can vividly picture almost as being Herman? Freaking Nathan Bates.
Nathan Bates is
Bates Motel.
Oh, the kid who play. You can't have him play him anymore because he's now on The Good Doctor. And he's like playing a kid with autism or a doctor with autism on that show. So you can't have him come back and do it. And I don't know how good his English accent would be because I think at this, like for this especially, you'd need like actually English character, like English actors.
You know, have you
little...
actually like sat down and like watched like an English show? They are so good. Like if this was actually like acted and directed like in English, it would be like English productions are so much better.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, I don't know who any English directors, so I can't.
Well, neither do I. I'm just saying like they're better somehow. I don't know.
I mean, they might be able to do it because then they'd be able to get away with like all of the nudity easier and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those were our thoughts on This Is How You Die. I think our next book is going to be by the same author. Either his new horror that just came out or his romance novel, which will be new for us because I may or may not have ordered that for you. So, and that one is called An Idiot in Love, which is just funny.
I'm so excited.
And then
how he does
and then the horror is Neighborhood Watch or something like that. So we'll let you know which one it ends up being. And if it's the romance novel, then we're also going to do like a compare and contrast kind of thing on his two writing styles because I assume they're a little bit different.
I would assume so. Two like completely polar opposite genres. So very.
I mean, you should have. Now I just want to go and write a horror romance novel.
I mean, yeah.
That would be fun. That would be a funny, like it'd be like a horror comedy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But anyways, so yeah, that was This Is How You Die. Definitely go and read it. Listen to it, however the fuck you consume books. This was like our third book that's not already some kind of TV series or movie, so that's exciting. It's a little disappointing because I want to watch the TV series, but